Hi, I'm Yolanda, and this is Speak On. And in this season, we're talking about shit you should care about. It's actually shit we should all care about. We hear the term bandied about so many times. Why aren't we talking about this more? We are, but there's just a lot of us speaking and we can't always hear each other. So for this season, we've chosen a few subjects that we really want to drill down into and talk about. And one of them is abortion. Why is she saying it with this jovial voice? Because it's just abortion. It's just a thing. It's just a productive right. It's just a healthcare right. It's no one else's business if you should do it. And guess what? If you don't like it, just don't have one. It's that simple, guys. Like, if you don't like it, it's fine. If you don't want to hear this anymore, just tune out. But one thing you should do is definitely shut the fuck up about it if someone else is having it, because it's none of your concern. So today I have on an awesome lady. I saw this speech and I watched it so many times. I know it's been viewed millions of times. I want to say that I might be personally responsible for at least 500,000 of those views because it was banging. Paxton Smith is amazing. She's here with me today. And for her commencement speech as valedictorian, she scrapped her pre-approved speech. She was like, nah, hun. She made the brave decision to speak on behalf of many women in Texas and around the world. Why? Because abortion rights are under attack. Not just in Texas, they are in other countries as well. But she just chose that moment to really use her voice, and it was amazing to hear. And there have been so many issues, particularly with the pandemic, etc. There's been a backslide in lots of things, women's rights, health rights, etc. And we've talked a lot on our show about gender disparities in healthcare, and we will continue to talk about that because it's a big deal. But when it comes to abortion and abortion rights, as Paxton said, it's a problem that cannot wait. There's a war on the rights of women and we cannot stay silent. And I won't allow you to stay silent any longer, Paxton. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
I mean, thank you for coming on. It's great to have you here. I'm horrified at the subject that has connected us, but I'm really glad that we're here anyway. How are you doing just generally? How is life right now?
Life is super busy right now, but overall, I'd say it's pretty good. I'm a freshman in college right now.
Okay, awesome. Love that. What are you studying?
I'm undeclared, but I'm planning to study music.
Oh, lovely. That's so nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Okay, well, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of all this. So your speech, it went viral because it was amazing, because it was brave, because it was brilliant. It was 2-3 minutes of just awesomeness. So what was the initial reaction when you stepped off the stage? Because you definitely were a little bit nervous about it, but I love that you just went for it. So yeah, what was the reaction when you stepped off the stage?
I was actually very surprised to find out that the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. I just got a lot of love and support right off the bat, and that was really great.
What did your school say? What did your friends say? What did your parents say?
I got mixed messages from the faculty. Overall, it was pretty positive, but right after graduating, I was pulled aside by two ladies. I don't know how they were affiliated with the school, but they were. And they told me that the school was considering withholding my diploma. Ultimately, I got my diploma. That did not end up happening, but there was a threatened consequence there.
Oh my gosh, imagine that. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, a part of me sometimes is surprised when these things happened, but I'd say only like 27% of me is surprised. The rest is like, we know these people exist and we know there are, I don't know if you use the term over there, busybodies and jobs worths. But anyway, can you tell me a little bit more about what the Texas SB8 bill is?
Yes, so Texas SB8 is the heartbeat bill, which I talked about in my speech, and it bans abortions starting at 6 weeks of pregnancy, regardless of whether the pregnancy was a result of rape or incest. Now, what makes this abortion ban, unique compared to other ones that have been attempted in the past, because other states have tried to ban abortion at 6 weeks, is that this one is not enforced by the state. This one is enforced by the citizens. So if a citizen suspects that somebody helped another person get an abortion, they can sue that person. And if they win the lawsuit, then they get a minimum of $10,000. Yes, it essentially puts a bounty out on people's heads.
Oh my gosh. Okay, because I'd heard bits of this before, certainly at the time, and how it was reported, but just hearing it like that just is so terrifying. So what does this mean for the future of like women's reproductive and abortion rights in Texas?
It's hard to say right now. We're still in the middle of, as a country, still in the middle of deciding whether or not SB8 is going to stay in effect. Right now, it is in effect. It was temporarily paused for 2 days, but it went back into effect, and it was just heard, the oral arguments were just heard by the Supreme Court. This case in particular is not necessarily going to touch on abortion rights. It's going to touch more on the enforcement of the law, on whether a state is allowed to pass a blatantly unconstitutional law as long as they put the enforcement to the citizens. So hopefully that gets overturned, because if it does not, then states can pass any law they want, meaning they can ban gay marriage if they want to, as long as they put the enforcement in the citizens. They can make any law they want. In terms of greater abortion rights in the country, there is another case happening right now. That is Dobbs versus Jackson Whole Woman's Health. And that one is about a 15-week abortion ban in Mississippi, which also violates the Constitution because it bans abortion before fetal viability. And that is going to be heard on December 1st. And that is going to determine whether or not Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision that protects abortion rights in the country, is going to be overturned or not.
There's a lot going on right there.
Yes.
I'm just trying to soak it all in. So how has this bill so far affected women?
What's happening right now is that women who are getting pregnant and they don't want to keep the pregnancies, their options have been severely limited. And it disproportionately affects people of color and people with low incomes, because they cannot travel out of the state for care. They just can't. They don't have the resources to do it. And so they are being put in situations where they're either forced to have children against their will, or they are risking their lives to have illegal abortions by people who are not certified to be giving those abortions. Now, to combat this, there are groups that do work to help fund people's trips outside of the state to get abortion care. And there are groups that try to make people aware of maybe mailing abortion pills in the mail to them, but it's still very difficult. And a lot of it's very tumultuous right now, because as I said before, the way that the Texas SB8 ban works is that people who help people get abortions, those are the people being sued. So a lot of people are afraid to help right now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So because of the legal technicalities around everything, and there are people trying to help people get out of the state to get care, have there been any cases of people interfering or trying to stop people getting out of the state and kind of legally being able to do that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I have heard of. That doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, but that's just something that I haven't heard of yet.
Okay. I mean, obviously, there is no way you can answer on behalf of the whole state, of course. But what are people on the ground saying about this? Because often when it comes to things, there is a disconnect sometimes with what people on the ground want and what politicians want. So does it feel like this choice politically is reflecting the thoughts of a lot of people in Texas, or is this something that feels quite disassociated?
It feels very disassociated. Most Americans, the majority of Americans, over 60%, think that abortion should be legal in most or all circumstances. So this is something that's just coming way out of left field, or I guess right field.
Yeah. How have politicians that have chosen for this bill to go ahead, how have they justified this? What kind of language have they used?
A lot of times they turn to the pro-life rhetoric, where this bill saves lives, which I think is a personal belief. If you believe that a fetus is a living human being, that is your personal belief. And there's nothing wrong with believing that, but there is something wrong with applying your beliefs to dictate what every single person should do with their lives in a situation that you will never experience. That's not okay. I think that rhetoric also ignores the lives of pregnant people. You know, before Roe v. Wade, before women and people who could get pregnant could have an abortion legally, thousands of women in our history died from illegal abortions because they could not get that health care from medical professionals.
Absolutely. So what is the current standard of sex education in the US and in Texas? Because, I mean, logically, logically, you'd think that if we're going to have this hardline stance on abortion, then we should absolutely be making sure that everyone is armed with all the information and all of the condoms. What is the actual state
you
of
would think,
this
right?
situation? Yeah.
You would think. So in the United States, there is no one standard sex education. It differs from state to state.
Okay.
So I'll just tell you about Texas.
Yeah.
In Texas, we have abstinence only sex education. So in my personal experience, we only had 2 days of sex education in all of my K through 12 schooling, 1 day in 7th grade, 1 day in 8th grade. And the premise of the sex education is don't have sex. If you have sex, you are tainted. If you have sex, you are gross and you lose some of your worth. And they do this through a number of exercises. Trojan Condoms actually has an advertising campaign combating this by the metaphor of a piece of chewed gum. Sometimes they chew a piece of gum and they'll say, does anybody want this gum now? No, because that's what happens when you have sex. You are this piece of chewed gum. That's common.
Sorry, my mouth has been open wide for this entire thing. Oh my goodness. Okay.
I know. So it really, really scares kids and makes them afraid of their sexualities, and it just shames them. And then in addition, there is no talk of contraceptives. I think we touched briefly on condoms, but only because of their ability to prevent STDs and not their ability to prevent pregnancy. There is nothing in place to teach students about how to prevent pregnancy. There is also nothing about consent. Consent is not part of the curriculum whatsoever. Neither is sexuality or gender.
I didn't expect that.
I know.
Some of those. I expected some things to be missing. I didn't know that it was that. I feel like sometimes when I've looked at, if I watch particularly satirical cartoons and things like that, and they will make fun of different states and everything else, I always thought it was kind of jest. I know obviously many a true word spoken in jest, but I thought it was satire, so it was pushing it to the limits. I didn't realize that is how, I don't know, I suppose basic. It's not even basic education.
Bad.
It's not even, It's not education, is it? It's misinformation, essentially.
Right. And it's not required to be medically accurate.
What? How do you? I know. It's not required to be medically accurate. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Oh my goodness.
It's insane. Well, okay. Texas did recently just have a very brief reform, or a reform with sex education. The first one in over 2 decades. It will go into place this coming year. Mm-hmm. It will teach about contraceptives. That is the only addition to the curriculum.
My goodness. But of course, because it doesn't have to be accurate, it could be anything.
It does not have to be accurate. And no school actually is required to teach sex education. If they choose to teach the sex education, then that is the curriculum they will follow.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So how did you, if you don't mind me asking, how did you learn? Like, were your parents better at informing you, or did you just watch TV or read a magazine? How did you learn?
I had a phone and Wi-Fi and Snapchat, which is more than a lot of kids have.
Oh my goodness.
And on Snapchat, there are these little snap stories created by companies. And I got my sex education from those snap stories, one specifically Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Which was actually very sex positive. And I talk about this in my book a little bit. I have a book coming out, A War on My Body. It's coming out on January 22nd, 2022.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations.
Yes, I'm so excited. All of the proceeds are going to be going towards the AFIA Center, which combats racial disparity in accessing reproductive health care.
Amazing.
But I talk about it in my book, and I talk about how reading those Cosmopolitan stories, that was the first time that I saw such a sex positive approach to educating people about sex. And that was the first time that I saw that what I choose to do with my sexual life has nothing to do with anybody else, and that what I do should not be dictated by what I think other people think of me.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what's taught in Texas sex education.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I mean, Cosmopolitan over since I'm 40. So since I was younger, I remember reading it, and it's always had that stance and it's always been that way. There was also a magazine over here in the UK when I was younger called More. That was the same as well. But then we actually have a sex ed curriculum, which is a bit more solid. I mean, there are loads of bits missing, but at least we understand a good amount of, I mean, consent and things that are being added now, but it was still, well, light years ahead. How did you, I suppose obviously you're there, you're learning on Cosmopolitan, you're learning on Snapchat, etc. How did that make you feel when you started to learn that, well, this is actually, oh, this is what sex is, this is how it can operate, this is how it can make me feel, this is how to keep myself safe, but this is what they taught me? What was that process like in your head? How did you feel about that?
It's a little bit confusing because you go to school and you're supposed to trust what they're teaching you is true, and you expect what they're teaching you is true. So there's this kind of disillusionment at some point where you just realize that that is not reality, that the sex education you were taught is not true and it's not fair.
My goodness. Wow. That's really blown my mind. And when you started to learn, were your friends learning at the same way, at the same pace? Were you able to have conversations with them about it, or were you in turn educating them? How did that work?
Sex is very taboo in Texas. So those were not always conversations that I would be having. When I was raised, I was told that if you are having sex, no one is going to like you. Nobody is going to want to be friends with you. So if you do have sex, do not tell anyone about it. So I did not have a whole lot of conversations about that until more recently in my life.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad. Because it's also, I think, that way that we can learn from each other, the way that we can talk about things as well. Also, I suppose there's an element of bonding within that process too. That's so sad. I'm so happy for you that you got there in the end. But it's wild. So what about, like, because there is this abstinence only rule, what about access to contraceptives? And I'm not talking about via school, because obviously we know that's a no-go. What about access to contraceptives, like just generally? Because I know I kind of understand what Plan B is, but I do know that their funding was under attack a lot. How does one access contraceptives outside of going to a supermarket? And if there is so much shame, are people just not buying them because they're scared? Like, what's the deal with that?
Well, beyond Plan B and beyond condoms, which you can buy in the drugstore, there are oral contraceptives, IUDs, patches, etc., which you have to go to a doctor to get a prescription for, and then you can have those. Now, under the majority of healthcare plans here, health insurance, you can actually get a type of birth control that you have to get prescribed for free. You can do that for free. So that's great. However, if you are not under health insurance, you can spend up to $1,000 on accessing birth control. And the majority of people who are not on health insurance, they don't have that kind of money in the first place to be spending on contraceptives. It is a lot of money. It is a lot. And additionally, about a year ago, the Supreme Court ruled that if your employers here in the US, I don't know how it is in the UK, but here in the US, they give their employees health insurance. If your employer is religious and they think that their religion inhibits them from paying for your birth control via the health insurance, they don't have to cover that under the health insurance. So people are left to get their birth control on their own, facing the same cost as people who don't have health insurance.
Oh my gosh. So really, it just, wherever you turn, essentially, depending on who you are, where you work, where you were born, your socioeconomic background, the religious beliefs of your boss, and anything else, you really are just at the mercy of whatever the hell happens to you, essentially.
Right. Absolutely. Especially if you don't make a lot of money.
My God.
You know, in my situation, I had a phone, I had Wi-Fi. I was 12.
Yeah.
A lot of 12-year-olds don't have that. Or at least when I was 12, a lot of 12-year-olds didn't have that. They don't have the money for it. And that's how I got my sex education. And then if you look at like getting birth control, if you don't have a car to go to the doctor to get to get a prescription, then you have to find a way to get there. You have to pay for the doctor's visit. Then when you get home, if you don't have health insurance, then you also have to pay for that. And it's just all of these obstacles constantly stacking up, preventing people from preventing unplanned pregnancy, which now they can't get abortions either. And if you don't make enough money to travel outside of the state for healthcare, health coverage under birth control, then you can't get an abortion. And then you're having a kid against your will because somebody else decided that for you.
Yeah. So it's just like, it literally is, it's not even a spiral of poverty. It's kind of a descent into more poverty, essentially, a descent into a more precarious and incredibly frightening circumstance. My goodness. And you talked about the religious beliefs of your boss, etc. And obviously, yes, I do completely understand there's a Hippocratic oath for healthcare providers and for doctors, but are there any circumstances where doctors or healthcare providers' religious beliefs can impact on their potential patients when it comes to looking for help as well, or are they quite ethical?
With doctors, I think it varies. In my experience with going to the doctor to get birth control, I've been to the doctor twice to get prescribed birth control over the course of my life. And both times have been slightly uncomfortable experiences because of how the doctor reacted. They always got very tense and very uncomfortable, which was very strange for me because they're a gynecologist. You would think they get that a lot.
Yeah.
I had a friend once who, she was 19 when she went to go get her first prescription of birth control. And the doctor told her that instead of birth control, she should try the Tylenol method, which is holding your knees so close together that you can keep a Tylenol pill held between them. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That's
Jesus
crazy
Christ.
to me. I know.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm sorry. That really blew me away. That's insane. Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I don't even know how to follow that up.
And
that's just taking that took me out. That's
my experience and my friends.
Yeah.
Think of how much bigger the problem is.
Yeah. My goodness. So, I mean, initially when the SB8 bill was passed, and then I remember, I want to say, oh my goodness, summertime, September time or something, the US Supreme Court declined to block the bill initially. Right. So now you've gone over, earlier on, you talked about kind of the next steps. What are like activists like yourself doing to, I suppose, I don't know, support that work? And what are you able to do on the ground? Because I appreciate there's going to be so many blocks and roadblocks, etc., in your way. What can you do?
For me personally, what I always say that people should do, start conversations about it, talk about it, invite people into the issue. I think a lot of men especially feel like they should not be talking about the issue. And the reality of things in the US, they have about as much control over it as we as women do, if not more control. And I think that men need to be involved in this as well, because it's our human rights. Yes, it's women's human rights, non-binary, transgender people's human rights, but men need to support that as well. So start conversations. 2, put pressure on lawmakers, put pressure on your legislators to make laws and legislation that value us as human beings. And then for other groups that are working towards helping reproductive rights in the country, they work on policy. So we have this bill in Congress right now called WIPA, which essentially will codify abortion rights. It will make it so that you can never get rid of abortion rights in the country. And it will also get rid of a lot of the abortion restrictions, which are already in place, like waiting times. Right now there's waiting times, which we can get into that later if you're interested. I won't get into all of the laws right now. There's so much, but there's also very little at the same time.
Yeah, that's why I think my question was kind of like all garbled, because I'm like, oh, on one hand, I'm like, what can you do? But on the other hand, it doesn't feel like people have a lot of power, weirdly, in this situation.
It feels like it. It does feel like it. Honestly, on a very big level, there's not a whole lot that the people can do other than just put pressure on lawmakers and vote in people to office who will make laws that benefit us as people.
Yeah.
Because once they're in office, they can do what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Goodness. And one thing we do know about people in government is they are wild and they will do things for no good reason. We have a lot of that over here. It's truly, we're living in strange times. My goodness, that was just so much to take in there. Going back to learning about reproduction, safe sex, etc., what kind of organizations exist that are there to give information to young people, and how are young people in Texas able to access them? Particularly, I know you talked about the fact that there are, some people are privileged enough to have mobile phones, access to Wi-Fi, etc. But how else is anyone able to get information?
How else? I mean, there are not a lot of groups that go out and try to approach young people, at least from my experience. I think I've rarely been approached by groups that want to give information on sex education and contraceptives. That's more of a thing in college than it was in junior high and high school.
Okay.
I think a lot of it really does come down to, do you have access to the internet to be able to find the information on your own? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And obviously the internet is, on one hand, it's great, but it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? You can find amazing information, but some of it is insane.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yes.
So you have to make sure it's a really good, reliable source. And if you don't know before you get there, how do you know when you're in it?
Right. And a lot of times people don't even know what they should be looking for when they are looking for their sex education.
Of course. My goodness. So I mean, I'm still digesting everything you said. Because externally, we're kind of like, Texas can be viewed and has kind of been written about or kind of joked about online as being a prequel to The Handmaid's Tale, etc. Like, what's going on in this state? Are there other states that are actually quite similar, or is Texas getting all the flack unfairly, or fairly, I should say? Are there any other states that are quite similar in this, like similar to this bill? Do they have similar restrictions, etc.? Or is Texas really standing alone here?
There are other states that want to ban abortion as well. Texas is not the first state to try to ban abortion. There have been several other states who have tried the 6-week heartbeat bill thing as well.
Okay.
What made our bill stand is the way that it's enforced. It's very difficult to challenge in court. Right now, there are other states trying to copy Texas's abortion ban.
Yeah.
At least 2 right now are working on something actively, but there's projected to be about 12 that might try to copy it. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And then if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, 12 states will automatically ban abortion.
I just can't. It's just horrible to even think about, because I mean, across Europe, when this was happening, particularly across the UK, London, etc., sometimes I kind of make far too sweeping statements about across Europe, across the UK, but in London it very much sometimes feels like you can feel like we're in a bit of a principality. But so across London, we kind of we were so dismayed, we were so shocked, because abortion in Europe, it's available for a lot of people, and it's available on demand, whether it be because of health, socioeconomic backgrounds, etc. Apart from Poland, who went the other way entirely, and there's like, they have like literally a near total ban on it. Malta as well has a complete ban under any circumstance on abortion. And I remember having conversations with my friends, and I was wondering like how much fear this puts into activists' kind of hearts when they see these restrictive laws come into place, because is this going to inspire these kind of countries that want to be more hardline anti-abortion campaigners to really push for these things? And oh my gosh, are they going to win? Oh Lord, it sounds awful, but yeah, what happens now? So have I just presented a really bleak future? I'm so sorry.
What happens now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd actually never thought about that before. What happens, it's so weird that I haven't thought about that before. I'm literally on a UK podcast about a Texas abortion ban, about what happened here affects the rest of the world.
Well, because I know it has been a sort, I mean, I've just seen in people's responses online, not people I know and like, of course, but people's responses online that they're like, well, yeah, what's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this. Why are people having abortions? And particularly in Ireland, there is a near total ban. Some changes have happened over the past few years, but still not really many. But yeah, I feel I don't know. I just wonder, it's just kind of wondering what happens next and how far reaching is this, or does this become? I mean, obviously legal structures in different countries will prohibit potentially the same thing that's happened in Texas. Like you were saying, it kind of puts the enforcement into the hands of the people, etc. But yeah, I don't know. It's just definitely, I wanted to have this show because I feel like it's something that we should all care about, we should give a shit about, and something we should all be watching, even if we're in Texas or not. And it's something that we should certainly be supporting people in Texas to kind of fight against as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So out of all this, for you, how has making that speech and going viral, how has it actually impacted your life? Because it was really brave to do that. You know, you can do, it's not like you're in your house saying it, essentially. You said it and then it went, you know, millions of people around the world have seen this, billions potentially have seen this. How has it affected you? Obviously, you've got your book coming out, but what's happened? How's your life kind of unfurled since then?
A lot has changed. I had about 24 hours of normal life after the speech, and then everything just totally different.
Yeah.
So now I do a lot of activism around this issue. As you know, I'm coming out with a book. I now serve on the board of directors of a national nonprofit which funds abortions and emergency contraceptives in all 50 states. So that is called WRAP. Yes, WRAP, the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. I'm on the advisory board for A is For, which uses the nonprofits to destigmatize abortion, which uses the arts to destigmatize abortion, excuse me. And then I do speaking around the country. Soon I'll be going to Switzerland to speak at a human rights forum about the issue.
Wow.
And then I work with media companies to talk about the issue on their platforms and bring more attention to it. Wow,
that's amazing. My goodness. And you're doing all this while studying at university?
Full-time student.
Oh my goodness. How are you fitting this in, Paxton?
It's hard, but I make it work.
Wow, just like clearly just sleeping 4 hours a night and just using every other hour of the day.
No, I always get 8 hours of sleep.
Okay, you're just one of those people that's
the
kind
priority.
Of insanely efficient then. That's amazing. So what do you say to pro-lifers? And I'm using air quotes. People can't see me, but I'm still using the air quotes. What do you say to pro-lifers, in air quotes, that challenge you on your beliefs and on your speech?
I think it's totally fine to be pro-life, personally. Like if you are pro-life, good for you. But as I said before, just because you have a belief doesn't mean that everybody else should dictate their lives and their choices to match your beliefs. They are yours. And if you don't like abortion, then like you said before, don't have an abortion. That is totally up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. What could people do? I mean, obviously, you know, we're over here in the UK, but what could we do in the UK to support any of the work that you do and support, you know, people seeking abortion rights in Texas? How can we help?
I think the same thing that's happening right now, lifting voices up like mine and giving us a platform to continue speaking about the issue, drawing other people into the issue, basically saying, this is shit you should care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do, just bringing attention to it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you think we should know or that you would like us to talk about, or any other shit we should care about?
You know, sometimes I think about, gosh, is any of my work worth it if climate change is going to get to us first?
I think this as well. Whenever I'm standing there doing an anti-racism talk, I'm like, well, but of course, the earth could burst into flames.
Yeah.
And none of this would matter. Yeah. Well, actually, we do have an episode on climate change as well, called "How the fuck do we save the planet?"
Okay.
So yeah, tune in, guys, to that one. I mean, that's going to end up being about a 10-parter, but you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Where would you like to be found online if you do want to be found? And if you don't want to be found online, who should we look for instead?
Okay. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. My username is Paxton Smith or Paxton A. Smith.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And we will look out for your book.
A War on My Body.
A War on My Body. That's it. Okay, yeah. Cool. Brilliant. We'll look out for that. And then when it's released, we'll make sure that we share. And I'll make sure I pre-order a copy as soon as possible. Thank you for your time. You've been an amazing guest. And it's just been so lovely to speak to you.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you for listening to Speak On. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, co-workers, strangers in the street. To find out more about us, including our upcoming events, head over to Instagram, instagram.com/speakon_. Bye!